When we think about what we need to survive, we always jump to the obvious stuff, right? Food, water, a roof over our heads. But there's something else, something we do every single day that's just as vital, and that's communication. It's how we build everything.
So when I say communication, what's the first thing you think of? I'm guessing it's words, the things we say, the things we write. But what if I told you that all those words are just the very, very tip of the iceberg? Get this, the actual words we use, they make up only about 10% of our communication. Just 10%. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. It immediately makes you ask, okay, so what on earth is going on with the other 90%?
Well, here's the kicker. More than 70%, the vast majority of what you're actually saying comes from your body language. Yep, those little gestures, the way you stand, the look in your eye. That's where the real conversation is happening, often without us even realizing it.
So let's dive into that unspoken world. In this explainer, we're going to unpack that hidden conversation. We'll look at words versus body language, figure out why we get misunderstood so often, and then get into how to actually communicate better. We'll even touch on how culture changes all the rules and the huge role mass media plays in all this.
So let's start at square one. What do we even mean when we talk about communication? What is it really?
See, at its heart, communication is not a one-way street. It's not just about you talking at somebody. It's a two-way process, a dance. It's how we send and receive everything from basic facts to complicated feelings and ideas, all in the hope of reaching some kind of shared understanding.
And for that dance to work, you need a few key things. Obviously, you need a sender and a receiver. You need a message, an idea, a feeling, whatever it is. But here's the crucial part. You need a common ground, a shared understanding. Think shared culture or language. The end goal is usually to influence behavior in some way, and we use our whole toolkit to do it. Words, gestures, you name it.
All right, so how do we send these messages? Well, we basically have two main channels that we're using all the time, which brings us to our next section.
And this is where things get really interesting. Look at this. The average person spends 10 to 11 hours a day using words, speaking, reading, listening, writing. And yet, all that effort, all those hours, make up such a small piece of the pie. The real heavyweight, the thing that accounts for over 70% of the meaning people take away, is nonverbal. We live by words, but we communicate with our entire bodies.
And it's not just one thing. It's this whole symphony of signals happening at once. The way we stand, our facial expressions, how close we get to someone, our gestures. Every single one of these is like a word in this silent language that we're all speaking.
Let's break down a couple of these. Eye contact is a big one. Making direct eye contact can project confidence, for sure. But, and this is important, it's not universal. In some situations, looking down might not mean you're nervous. It could actually be a sign of deep respect or that you're just concentrating really hard.
The way you carry yourself says so much too. Think about it. When someone is standing tall and they lean in a little when you're talking, you just feel like they're listening, right? It's their body saying, I'm engaged, I'm open to what you're saying. It's an invitation and not a single word was spoken.
And then, of course, there's the smile. It's probably the closest thing we have to a universal signal. It just cuts across languages and cultures to say I'm friendly, I'm happy. It's an incredibly simple and powerful tool we all have to build a connection in an instant.
So if we're constantly broadcasting all these signals, both with our words and our bodies, why do things get so messy? Why do we get misunderstood so often? Well, it turns out there are some common roadblocks that get in the way.
Yeah, there are a few usual suspects. Sometimes we distort the message ourselves, maybe tweaking the truth a little to keep the boss happy. Then there's selective perception, where we basically just hear what we want to hear. We're also dealing with information overload all the time. Our brains just can't take it all in, so stuff gets ignored or forgotten. And this one, when our emotions are running high, our ability to really hear what's being said just tanks.
Okay, so knowing the problems is half the battle. Now, let's talk solutions. How do we actually build stronger bridges so our message gets across the way we want it to?
It really boils down to finding common ground. And that common ground is built on four main pillars. First, you need a common frame of reference. You have to be on the same page. Second, there has to be mutual interest in what you're talking about. Third, a common language, and that includes slang and idioms. And finally, a common environment. Things like a shared culture or being around the same age can make understanding way, way easier. And that last one, common environment, leads us to one of the biggest, most fascinating factors of all, culture.
because culture is basically the invisible rulebook for how we're all supposed to interact.
Let's take a look at a specific example from India. In many Western countries, a couple holding hands in public is totally normal, right? But in a different cultural setting, that exact same gesture might be seen as inappropriate. The action is the same, but the cultural rulebook gives it a totally different meaning.
Hierarchy and authority are huge too. India is what's known as a high power distance culture. All that means is that things like your age and status really matter. So remember what we said about eye contact? Here, someone of a lower status avoiding eye contact with a superior isn't being rude or shy, they're showing respect. It's a nonverbal rule of that culture.
Now, these rules don't just affect our personal conversations. They get scaled up and broadcast to millions, shaping entire societies. And that, of course, is where mass media enters the picture.
And media is the ultimate double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can be an incredible force for good, educating people, promoting important causes like health and literacy, and keeping us informed. But on the flip side, it can be used to spread lies and rumors, to stir up hate, and to invade people's privacy. It's a seriously powerful tool, and its impact really just depends on whose hands are on the controls.
So that leaves us with one last question to think about. We live in a world that is just screaming with information, with messages coming at us from every direction. So knowing everything we've just talked about, that words are just a fraction of the story, that our bodies and our cultures are always talking, how will you make sure that your message isn't just sent out into the noise, but that it's actually truly heard?